What if everything you believed about someone was a lie? Not a small lie, not a misunderstanding, but a truth so buried, so intentionally hidden that discovering it would tear the ground out from beneath you. What if the person you loved the most, the one whose absence you spent your entire life trying to explain, left behind a single letter, and in it confessed everything? She didn't expect to find it. She wasn't even looking. It was supposed to be just another dusty box in a forgotten attic. But inside that box was a letter, crumpled, yellowed, and sealed with red wax, like something sacred or cursed. It had her name on it, and it was dated years ago. He wrote it, but he never gave it to her. And that's when she knew. This wasn't an accident. This was a secret someone had buried, a truth someone was afraid she'd never be ready to hear. But she was ready now, even if it would hurt. Even if it would destroy everything she thought she knew about him and about herself. Because pain from truth is better than peace built on lies. Maybe you felt this too. That sense that something just didn't add up. That someone who was supposed to love you kept you at a distance you never deserved. Maybe you told yourself stories to cope with their silence. Maybe they just didn't know how to show it. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I wasn't enough. But what if they were carrying a pain they never knew how to explain? What if the silence wasn't rejection, but protection? What if love wasn't absent, just misdirected? In the next few minutes, you're going to hear the exact words that man never dared to say out loud. You're going to see how one letter, one simple piece of paper, shattered years of pain, guilt, and misunderstanding. And you're going to realize that what she found might be the very thing you've been searching for too. Because this isn't just a story about a daughter and a father. It's a story about generational silence, about wounds that never had a voice, and about the truth that arrives when it's already too late. It's a reminder that some of the most painful moments in our lives don't come from what people did to us. They come from what they never said. So don't look away. Don't scroll. Because once you hear what was written in that letter, you won't be able to forget it. And you won't be the same after hearing it. This might be the letter you were supposed to find. And maybe, just maybe, you're not here by accident. Maybe this story found you because your heart has been quietly asking for something, but didn't know how to say it. Maybe you've been carrying a silence of your own, a name you haven't mentioned in years, a question that's haunted you, a memory that never healed. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. This space, this video, isn't just a story. It's a place where broken voices find each other, where silence gets replaced with connection, and healing can begin with a few honest words. If there's a name you're holding in your heart, if there's something you never said, if you're carrying pain that's too heavy to carry alone, I want to invite you to write it below. Leave a prayer request in the comments. Just write, "Pray for me," or share what's on your heart. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to give names, but I promise you this, we read every single one. And we pray, genuinely, intentionally, together. Because sometimes healing begins not with answers, but with being seen. Sometimes it's not about fixing, it's about finally being heard. So if you feel that pull in your chest right now, don't ignore it. That's not weakness. That's your soul asking to breathe. Drop your prayer below. And if this video touched you in any way, help this message reach someone else. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with just one person who needs this. This isn't just a video. This is the beginning of something that can restore lives. And trust me, the story isn't over yet. She used to count the number of times he hugged her, and when she ran out of fingers before reaching her 10th birthday, she stopped trying. He was present, but always slightly out of reach. Like a shadow that moved with her but never touched her. She would walk into the room, hoping his eyes would lift from whatever held his attention. They never did. Birthdays came and went. Candles were blown out without his voice in the background. She remembered watching other fathers laugh, lift their kids into the air, call them by sweet nicknames, and she'd wonder quietly, what did I do wrong? Her mother's answer never changed. He's just not good at showing emotions. But even as a child, she felt something more, something colder, deeper. His silence didn't feel neutral. It felt like a wall, one built intentionally. And no matter how much she tried, she couldn't climb it. She carried that emptiness into her teenage years, into relationships where she accepted crumbs, into nights where she'd stare at the ceiling, trying to remember the last time someone had looked at her like she mattered. The absence of love teaches you to accept the bare minimum. She'd convince herself she didn't need affection, that she was strong, independent. But the truth was, she was lonely. And that loneliness came from a question that had never been answered. Why didn't he love me? People around her called her guarded, closed off, but they didn't understand. You don't become cold overnight. It happens when warmth keeps skipping your doorstep. She learned to bury her emotions because no one ever taught her they were safe to express. She learned to be quiet because every time she tried to ask, she got the same excuse wrapped in a smile. He's just tired. He works a lot. He's trying in his own way. But trying never felt like trying. It felt like silence. And the worst part? She blamed herself. That's what unspoken wounds do. They turn inward. She thought maybe she was too loud, too needy, too emotional. So she toned herself down, shrunk herself to fit inside his silence. But even then, it didn't bring him closer. Sometimes the wounds that shape us aren't the ones shouted in anger. They're the ones whispered in quiet neglect. And that kind of pain, when a parent becomes a stranger, is the kind that lingers in everything. In how you love, in how you fight, in how you leave. She started writing letters she never sent, to him, to herself, trying to find the words he never gave her. Pages filled with questions, none of which had answers, until the day she found his letter, the one he never sent. And suddenly the silence had a voice. This is where the story truly begins. If this feels familiar, if you've ever walked through the shadow of someone's silence, wondering if you were the reason they couldn't love out loud, I want you to leave a single dot in the comments. Just one, that's all. One dot that says, yes, I've felt this too. Or if you can go further, write the words she never heard. You were always enough. Your words may be exactly what someone else needs to read today. She wasn't looking for closure that day. It had been months since the funeral, and she'd already told herself she had moved on. But grief has strange timing. It doesn't show up when it's convenient. It waits, hidden in old photographs, in forgotten corners of attics, in dusty boxes that haven't been touched in years. She was helping her mother clean the storage room, sorting through things no one had touched since she was a child. The attic was colder than she remembered. Still, her fingers trembled for a different reason. The box was ordinary. A shoebox, taped shut on all four sides like it held something fragile or forbidden. Her mother had set it aside without much thought, but something about it called her back. Maybe it was the handwriting on the top. His handwriting, sharp, angled, distinct. She recognized it immediately. Her name, written in black marker. That name he barely spoke aloud. She peeled the tape slowly, almost afraid of what she'd find. Inside, dozens of envelopes, neatly stacked, untouched, everyone addressed to her. Some dated, some not. None of them opened. Some had fingerprints on them. Some were clean as if they'd never been handled. They were letters. Letters he had written but never sent. Unsent letters from a father who had barely spoken to her in life. She stared at them for a long time, unsure whether to feel angry or honored or terrified. What kind of father writes letters to his daughter and hides them away? What kind of love expresses itself in silence and ink rather than presence and touch? She started reading through a few, carefully, as if they'd fall apart in her hands. Most were simple, fragments of thoughts, awkward attempts to connect. I saw you win your first award today. I wanted to say I was proud, but I couldn't. Another one read, you looked like your mother tonight. It scared me how much. But one envelope was different. It was thicker, older, sealed with red wax as if it mattered more than the others. No stamp, no date on the outside. But when she turned it over, her breath caught in her throat. Written on the back in tiny, shaking letters, for her 8th birthday. Don't open unless you're ready. She had turned 8 the year he stopped trying altogether. That was the year he missed her recital. The year he forgot her birthday entirely. The year she cried into her pillow, thinking maybe she didn't matter enough. She was ready now, or maybe she wasn't. But the weight of the letter in her hand felt like a key, and whatever it unlocked, she had to face it. She broke the wax seal, slowly, gently, as if the paper inside carried a ghost. And when she opened it, when her eyes scanned those first few lines, her world cracked in a way that couldn't be undone. It wasn't just a letter. It was a confession of failure, of fear, of love buried under layers of guilt. He had written it for her, but also for himself. It started like this: I didn't know how to be the father you needed, but I never stopped wanting to be. At that moment, everything she thought she knew about him, every wall she built around her heart to survive the absence, every story she told herself just to get through the years, it all began to crumble. And she kept reading, not because it was easy, but because it was the truth. And when truth finally speaks, even the silence listens. She stared at the first line for minutes, not because she didn't understand it, but because some truths are so simple, they slice deeper than 1,000 complicated explanations. I didn't know how to be the father you needed, but I never stopped wanting to be. Those words weren't an excuse. They were a surrender, the kind a man writes only when he knows he's out of time. She kept reading, barely breathing. Every word was a weight pressed against her chest. I wasn't distant because I didn't love you. I was distant because I loved you too much. I was terrified that everything broken in me would spill over into you, that my silence would be better than my voice, that staying away would hurt you less than being close and failing. His words weren't perfect. They stumbled. They hesitated. But they were honest in the way only a man running from his shame can be. I thought I would ruin you, he wrote. So I stayed away. She felt something break inside, not because she was angry, but because for the first time she understood. All the years of silence, all the unanswered questions, all the nights she convinced herself she was unloved. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. A kind of fear that paralyzes, that convinces a father that his absence is somehow safer than his presence. That love, when mixed with pain, becomes a danger he must protect others from. And suddenly, the story she had carried her whole life, that he didn't care, that she wasn't enough, that he simply didn't love her, shattered. Because the truth was far more painful. He did love her, but he didn't believe he deserved to. He confessed to watching her grow from a distance, to celebrating her victories in silence. Every time I saw you smile, he wrote, I hated myself for not being the man you needed. It wasn't that he didn't feel pride. It was that his guilt turned every proud moment into a reminder of how far away he was from her life. She didn't remember him cheering at her school recital, but he remembered. He had stood behind the auditorium door, listening, wanting, regretting. She read the letter 5 times, and on the 6th, she broke. Not because the pain was new, but because it finally had a name. All these years she had blamed herself, wondered if she had been too much, too emotional, too complicated to love. But now she realized the distance was never about her. It was never a reflection of her worth. It was a reflection of his wounds. He wasn't cold, he was scared. And shame had chained his heart shut long before she ever arrived in his world. The letter wasn't an apology. It was a confession, a release, a final attempt to give her what he never could in person, the truth. And though he would never hear her response, she whispered it anyway. I would have forgiven you. Because sometimes we don't need perfect words. We just need someone to admit that they see the damage and wish they had done better. If someone you love ever pushed you away, and you thought it was because they didn't care, maybe this is your moment to see it differently. Maybe they weren't trying to hurt you. Maybe they just didn't know how to love. If this resonates, comment the words, I understand now. Because sometimes understanding is the only closure we'll ever get. She folded the letter slowly, pressing it back into the envelope like placing a fragile memory into a box that could never fully close again. He was gone. That part wouldn't change. There would be no more birthdays, no more chances to speak the words she needed to say, no face-to-face apology, no long overdue embrace. The man who had once stood behind her in silence was now silence himself. But something inside her didn't break this time. It shifted. For the first time in her life, she wasn't holding pain that felt directionless. She was holding truth, not the kind wrapped in sentiment or sugar-coated explanations. This was raw, heavy, real. But it was hers now. The silence she had dragged behind her like a shadow all these years was no longer empty. It had a voice, and in that voice, she heard more than regret. She heard his humanity, and something in her softened. The narrative she had built in her head, that she was unworthy, unlovable, invisible, started to come apart. Not in one grand cinematic moment, but piece by piece. It began when she reread the part where he said, "I thought I'd ruin you." And suddenly her entire childhood made sense in a different light. His absence wasn't her fault. His silence wasn't a reflection of her worth. It was his fear, his shame, his brokenness, not her failure. She wasn't unlovable. She was misunderstood. She wasn't too much. She was too precious for a man who believed he had nothing good left to give. And that truth, that single shift in perspective, began to heal her in places therapy and time never could. She started writing letters of her own, not to him, but to the little girl inside who had waited years for something that never came. Letters that said, "You were always enough." Letters that told her, "It wasn't your fault." Letters filled with all the love she wished someone had given her when she was too young to understand why people vanish without explanation. Every word was a step out of the darkness. Every page she wrote gave her back a piece of herself. She didn't need closure anymore. What she needed was clarity. And clarity, it turns out, was more healing than any apology ever could have been. She sat at the edge of her bed one night, holding that letter like a map she'd finally learned how to read. And for the first time in decades, she didn't feel lost. There was still pain, yes, but now it had a place. It had context. And most of all, it had an ending. Not his ending, hers. Because sometimes the truth doesn't fix what was broken between two people, but it mends what was broken inside one. She no longer needed him to show up. She had shown up for herself. And in doing so, she finally gave that little girl, the one who used to stare at the door hoping it would open, the one thing she had waited her whole life to hear. You were never the problem. If you've ever believed that you were the reason someone couldn't love you, if you carried that silent wound into adulthood, into relationships, into your view of yourself, I want to invite you to leave a message in the comments. Just a simple sentence. I know the truth now, because your voice matters here. And maybe, like her, your healing starts with one sentence. There are stories that arrive too late to change the ending, but right on time to change the reader. That letter didn't bring him back. It didn't erase the years of silence, the missed birthdays, the void where affection should have lived, but it gave her something else, something she didn't know she needed until she felt it forming like light cracking through a locked room. It gave her understanding. Understanding doesn't reverse the damage. It doesn't put a voice on the other end of the phone or place arms around your shoulders when you needed them most. But it does something just as powerful. It releases the weight you never knew you were carrying. The questions that looped inside her for decades. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't he try? Was I ever truly loved? They didn't vanish, but they softened. Because now she had something real, not imagined, not assumed, but written. In his own words. She read those words again on the anniversary of his death. This time not from a place of pain, but from a place of peace. And as she read, she felt the difference in her body. The tightness in her chest was gone. The ache behind her ribs didn't pulse as hard. She could breathe again, not because everything made sense, but because something finally did. She thought about all the moments in life where she had chosen silence, when she had shut down instead of opening up, when she had walked away instead of asking to be loved differently. And she realized that the pain he passed on to her, she had passed on to others too. That's how it works. Pain unspoken doesn't die. It echoes, it repeats. But truth ends cycles. That's why she kept the letter, not to cling to the past, but to remind herself how far she had come. It became a kind of anchor, not for who he was, but for who she had become because of him. A woman who survived the silence. A woman who rewrote the story with her own pen. She began writing again, but now she wrote not from pain, but from clarity, from grace. She wrote letters she'd never send. Letters to friends who had drifted away, to ex-lovers who left her second-guessing her worth, to the parts of herself she once hated. She wrote to the girl inside who waited by the window for a man who didn't know how to come home. She told her, You were never too much. You were just too bright for someone stuck in their own darkness. And maybe that's why this story is in front of you now. Maybe this was never just her journey. Maybe it was yours too. Maybe you've been waiting for someone else's words to unlock your own, for a sign that the letter you've kept inside you is still worth writing, still worth feeling, still worth forgiving, because the truth doesn't always arrive on time, but it always arrives with purpose. Sometimes it doesn't save the person who wrote it. It saves the one who reads it. So if this story reached you in places you didn't expect, if it stirred something silent and sacred, maybe it's your moment now. Your moment to speak what's never been said, to write what's been buried, to tell your truth, even if no one ever reads it, because silence doesn't heal, but truth does. And if this story touched you, if even a sentence felt like it was written for you, I want you to leave something in the comments. Not for me, not for the algorithm, for you. Write these words. I have a letter too. Just that. And if you feel brave enough, tell us who it's for. Because maybe, just maybe, someone else in these comments needs to know they're not the only one. And before you go, there's another story you need to hear. One that began with a single note. She left it before she left forever, and no one noticed until it was too late. And if you're still here, if you made it to this point, it means this story didn't just speak to you, it found you. So here's what I want you to do. If this video made you feel even a flicker of something true, subscribe to this channel, not just to follow stories, but to walk through them, to heal through them, to be reminded that you're not alone in the silence. Leave a like, not because we asked, but because this story mirrored something you've carried for far too long. Let that like be your silent nod that says, yes, I felt this. And in the comments, if you stayed until the very end, write this: I stayed for the truth. Let that phrase be your mark, a sign that you didn't scroll past pain. You sat with it, faced it, and let it move you. And above all, don't stop here. The next story is already waiting for you. It's appearing right now on your screen. It's about a note, one no one saw in time. Click it, because your heart isn't done listening yet.